Cool. You have a podcast. Me too. Cheers, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. A new season, new beginnings. As you can see, it's just me. Things are a little bit different. So today, I want to do some explaining. I've got some explaining to do. I've got some new news. I've got an explanation on what has gone on in the past with Why on Earth. And I don't think you guys know the backstory. So I just want to give you the backstory. I want to have you understand why it is just me and why you're stuck with me for the rest of the season. I think it's a great thing. I'm excited. I love talking. I don't know if you guys have been able to tell, but I love talking. Before we get started, if you have liked this content in the past, if you like this content in general, if you like hearing me speak, go ahead and give us a subscribe, whether you're listening or whether you're watching on YouTube. Hit that notification bell on YouTube so that you know when my videos pop up. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go ahead and give us a subscribe. What else? I don't know. All I know is the overlords over at Google, they appreciate that, and it lets them know that you guys like my content. Maybe we'll do something with that. Maybe I can get paid for what I do. Maybe I can get paid to talk. That'd be nice. I mean, I guess I already get paid to talk because I'm an actor. Well, I guess, you don't necessarily have to talk. It's a little bit of the facial emotion and all that kind of stuff, as well as the talking. But at the end of the day, I love to talk. And so let's get started. So this podcast, first and foremost, is no longer called Why on Earth. It's called Cool You Have a Podcast. Because look, everybody has a podcast nowadays. We're in quarantine still. It's California, so we're going to be in lockdown for God knows how long. Who knows? But yeah, so everyone has a podcast. It's not that cool. So I'm making fun of myself, so you don't have to. I went ahead and did that for you. But yeah, so to give you a little backstory on what took place prior to this season, why it took so long to do this season, and why I had to change the name. Also, why Marquise isn't here. Marquise and I started Why on Earth. Man, was it 2018? It was 2020? 2018. So it was, no. Wait, yes. 2018. We started our podcast, and the genesis of that was really just us loving our conversations. We were talking about everything from philosophy, politics, religion, spirituality. We'd been going through a bunch of spiritual phases with meditation and yoga, a little bit of psychedelics. Hope that that isn't a problem, but a little bit of psychedelics, trying that inward seeking, that ascension of knowledge that for some people psychedelics brings, and for some it does not. So yeah, we were talking, and I was like, come on, man, let's bring this to YouTube. Let's bring this to a podcast. I think people are gonna really enjoy hearing us talk, and we're not right all the time. We disagree a lot of times, but at the end of the day, we agree on some core fundamental values, and that allows for the conversation to take place. We agree on some core values, how to engage in a conversation, and how to move forward within a conversation, even if we disagree or heavily disagree. And I think the biggest thing that we were talking about at the time was politics, and we did disagree on that, which everybody disagrees on politics nowadays, so it's not that big of a deal, but apparently it is a big deal in other spheres outside of having a conversation with Marquise. But that's what we did. We took the idea, Why on Earth, and the reason we called it Why on Earth, and so the letter Y, we're Generation Y, we're millennials. So we wanted to come at life and perspectives, or we wanted to come at conversations from a millennial perspective. And that's what we did. So for the first year, we were having a bunch of conversations about politics, it's mainly politics, and it was getting crazy. As you guys know, it's a crazy time. Politics is a really difficult subject to talk about and to come to solutions on, and I think a good example of that is what's happening today. Nobody can come to any solutions on what to do politically, how policy should go, what is right, what is wrong, moral values, all of that kind of stuff. So we took a step back and we said, okay, let's delete everything. So we deleted everything. We wanted to come at it with a new season with that idea of, okay, let's talk about critically thinking. Let's take subjects everywhere from politics to religion, philosophy, biology. Even though we're not experts, let's talk about them. Let's bring people on so we can have conversations with them. And that's what we did. We invited people on. You can go and look at our YouTube or listen to our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much every podcast platform out there, Google Play, all that kind of stuff. And it was fun. We had some really cool conversations. I really recommend going back and listening as much as you can because they're fun, they're informative, they are thought-provoking, and that's kind of what we really wanted to do is provoke thought. And not just in our audience, but really for us as well, and maybe our guests too. And we also learned a lot from our guests. But the reason it's just me now, so I think our last podcast episode was about a month ago, and we released it. A little controversial, must say. We're talking about race. We're talking about race relations. We're talking about how do we create solutions regarding that. And we decided to come at this new season in a different way. We were talking all about it. Then we get an email. We get an email from an organization called Why on Earth Community. And they have a Why on Earth Community podcast. They do some really cool things. And there was definitely some conflicts with our name. We had also been getting some tags on Instagram that were not meant for us. And so I totally saw the issue there. We negotiated with them to see, okay, like, what do you guys want from us? Is it a logo change? Is it just a name change? What is it? But they have patents on all that kind of stuff. So they did their due diligence for situations like this, which is very smart. Maybe I should do that for this podcast. But yeah. So we changed our name. We went through a lot of thoughts of, okay, well, how do we still come at this the right way? We really liked the why aspect, the millennial aspect, but it's like, all right, well, we can still talk about that stuff without having it in our name. And so I was like, hey, what if we just did like, cool, you have a podcast, it's not that cool. Making fun of the fact that everyone has a podcast, still talk about this kind of stuff, still bring guests on. And we did that. So we came up with a logo. We came up with, we changed everything on our podcasts, on Facebook, YouTube, and you can go check that out. It's cool. You have a podcast now. And then I had a conversation with Marquise, and I was like, Marquise, you've got a lot going on right now. You're doing some really big things. He's creating an incredible course, life coach, taking into account specifically spirituality and being able to transmute our past, our pain, our traumas, our ways of doing things into success. And along that path of success, you want to have the right base to be able to move off of. And so he's really doing a great job at creating that. I actually took like a mock course. I'm actually still a part of it right now, taking a mock course with him. And it's really cool. And I was like, hey, man, is this podcast going to get in the way of that? Because it does take a lot of time to do a podcast. I've had a lot of people ask me, even though we're not getting a bunch of views, I've had a lot of people ask me, hey, how do I get this started? What's the easiest way? And I've gone through a lot of growth pains figuring out what an RSS feed is, working with the sound. For a while, we were just using this one mic, and it's shitty if you just have one mic for two people. And then we were like, all right, let's do two mics. We got two computers because we're on a budget here. So I'll do all my recording on my computer. You do all your recording on your computer. We'll sit 3 feet apart, and then I'll go in the editing and I'll cut and splice every time you're talking. I'll mute me every time I'm talking. I'll mute you. So it's a ton of work. And then also just the posting, the engagement, all that kind of stuff is a lot of work. So I asked him, do you want to continue this? I set the premise that, hey, no matter what, I'm going to continue this podcast because I just, maybe it's for my sanity. I like to talk. I hope that I do affect people in a positive way, or at least, give people an idea of what rational, intelligent discourse looks like. So we had a great conversation, and Marquise decided, you know what, maybe it's best that I walk away. And he's like, but I would love to be a guest on your podcast. I would love to continue this in some sort of way, even if it's just us having phone calls once in a while and really talking through things. And so that's what we did. Just so you guys know, there's zero animus. We're still incredibly good friends. We pretty much talk every single day, whether it's politics. He sent me a really cool, hierarchy of politics. What's the most important when looking at a candidate? So we talked about that yesterday, and I want to bring that to you guys because his hierarchy is a little bit different from mine, especially in today's climate. And so I think I'm taking into account today's climate, how we look at politics, and then with a character like Donald Trump coming in, okay, for Republicans, how did their hierarchy of needs or their hierarchy of politics change? Let's get to what I want to focus on in this podcast. This is different. It's going to be me. I'm working this out as I go. I want to really take into account the millennial aspect. I'm a millennial. I'm 25 years old. I look at life based on most of my conversations with people, based on when I look at Facebook and Instagram. I think differently than a lot of people. My goal always is to critically think about a subject. I see something, a headline online. I see a video that comes out, and my first thought is, okay, what is the narrative? What are people saying happened? A lot of times it's the opposite. So before I make a comment on it, before I jump to a conclusion, I'm going to wait for the facts to pan out. I'm going to take the facts into account and do my best to sift through it and sift through all the online bullshit and then come to my own conclusion. And so that's what I really want to focus on with everybody is I want to focus on the critical thinking aspect. How can we critically think about the craziness going on? Coronavirus, protests, riots, what else? Politics. We're in an election year. So I think that's, a lot of the reason why everything is just stoked up. The flames are high. The tensions are high. The dichotomy between good and evil is at a place where I can't even fathom. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Maybe today, maybe another podcast. But the way this is going to go with Cool You Have a Podcast is I'm going to have guests on, and I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. Health, mental health, philosophy, politics. And I want to bring on people from all different perspectives. If you guys listened or watched to our, podcast number 7, Bridging the Gap, I believe it was called, with Mike Ruthenberg. Mike Ruthenberg is a conservative, and we thought, well, absolutely, we should have a conservative on because we consider ourselves, Marquise and I, center of the line. Sometimes with things we go a little more conservative, sometimes we go a little more liberal, but everything is left and right, far left, far right. In the media, in people's heads, it's a little bit ridiculous. So how can we bridge that gap? How can we come to a solution? How can we create a common ground first? And that was a great conversation. I think I want to continue to do that because in every conversation you have to create a common ground. Otherwise, there is nowhere to work off of. And that goes back to the dichotomy between good and evil. It's either you're on the right side or the wrong side. There is no in between. It's I'm on the good side, therefore your side is evil. Or you're on my side, so you're on the good side. And from there, you cannot create any solutions. And I think that's why the solutions that are being presented have no real weight. And they're not going to get anything done, which is why the tensions are going to continue to rise up into the election. And I think that it's only going to get worse from here. So I think we need to talk about it. We need to think about it. We need to critically think about it and see how we can individually make decisions that better ourselves and thus better our communities. We put a lot of weight on the president and who the president is, and that represents our country. And it's very true, but I've been thinking a lot about, okay, what can I do in my time to actually affect change? And it's local elections. It's knowing who my sheriff is, let's say, my representative in my city, getting to know them, doing my best, going to town halls, writing letters, making phone calls, and trying to enact some form of change, or having a conversation to try and bring about some change. So that's what we're gonna do. One thing I want to talk about is I love politics and I hate it. I love talking about politics, but it's a slippery slope always. It riles people up, especially in today's climate, and I don't believe that either party has my best interest in mind. And I think a lot of people are in that place. In 2016, we were in that place. It was vote for the lesser of two evils. In 2020 election, it's vote for the lesser of two evils. And that isn't the kind of progress that we foresee or that we want. So how do we continue this? How can we continue this? I think that through conversation, we can continue this. We can continue our nation, its founding, and I think there are things that we need to talk about regarding racial relations, the country's founding, slavery, reparations, left versus right, socialism, Marxism, communism, radical right, neo-Nazism, if that's even a thing. Those things need to be talked about. A lot of people may roll their eyes when thinking about that. Yeah, just, like, let's just talk about it. Like, that'll do something. But no, it actually will. If we have good intentions in our hearts and we want to enact positive change, we must have the conversation to do so. Otherwise, we're dealing with tyranny. We're having a power shift that results in tyranny. We're having one person rise up with their thought, and everyone's got to come along with them. So I want to encourage you guys to think about what it is that you picture, what it is that you want. What kind of society do you want to live in? How would you want your relationships with your neighbors to play out? How would you want your relationships with your boss, with your family, with your friends to play out? How would you want your interactions with a stranger to play out? And I think there's a lot of power in visualizing and speaking into existence what it is that we want and how we want it to play out. Now, a lot of people want the democratic socialist idea of society, where our government comes in and takes care of everything: free healthcare, universal basic income, what else? Just free rent, free everything, right? Now, that's a conversation that I would like to have. I've got a friend who is a self-avowed communist, and I would love to have a conversation with him because I completely disagree with that. And I have a lot of, I believe, evidence on my side as to why I disagree with it. But he's a really smart guy. So why wouldn't I want to have a conversation with him to see what he thinks and why he thinks it, what he wants and why communism is the way to get there. Now, we can look at history and see that communism, socialism, which leads to communism, has never worked and is the result of hundreds of millions of deaths and wars. But I think it's the essence of Marx that people enjoy. It's the idea of the bourgeois versus the proletariat, or bourgeoisie, I don't know. It's the power shift. It's the equity. It's the not just the equality of opportunity, it's the equality of outcome. So we have the same things. There's nobody that is above or below. We are all at the same level, and everything is taken care of. And it's this utopia. And or I think somebody described it to me as the Garden of Eden. And when somebody said that to me, I was like, oh, wow. What if there's this, since the Garden of Eden, the idea of the Garden of Eden, we have been trying to get back all this time. The attempts the attempts of socialism and communism is the idea of utopia and us wanting to go back to the Garden of Eden, right? Where everything is taken care of, where everything is flourishing. And so I think it's important to have that conversation. I might be wrong. I might get destroyed. He may have a boatload of facts to just be like, this is why it works. Here's where it worked. Blah, 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 blah. And I don't see that taking place. And I see myself being able to hold my own. And the reason why socialism won't work, the reason why a representative republic is the most important thing that has ever been tried. Is it perfect? No, but it's the most important and freedom loving platform that has ever been created. And it's only been around for a couple hundred years, but we're still here. And we're at a crossroads right now of where do we want to go. And I think that's politically, I think that's mainly politically, but also socially. Where do we want to go, especially with the rise of technology and all that? So anyways, I'm rambling, but all this is to say that I want to have conversations with people that I disagree with. And that's the way that I can see that we create change. Because if we come into a conversation with a common ground, or an attempt for a common ground, going into a conversation, to quote Mike Ruthenberg from a conversation last season, going into a conversation looking to make a friend, not to be right. So yeah. Let's go into these conversations looking to make friends, looking to come away learning something, because each person has something to teach me. Now, there's this crazy guy who came up to me and we had a quick conversation, and he told me some things, and they were wrong what he said factually, but at the end of it he said, each one teach one. Go about your life with that motto, each one teach one. And I thought about the reverse, that in every conversation with everybody that I meet, it's the same thing, that I can be taught, that they know something that I don't. And that's how I try to live my life. That's how I try to go about these conversations, whether I disagree or not with people. But at the end of the day, I think we all kind of want the same things. Some of us don't. Some of us want radicalism on either side, whatever it may be. But I think your average person wants the same thing. They kind of want to be left alone. They want equality of opportunity. They don't want unfairness. They want to be able to work, to create, to benefit off of their creations, and to go about their lives. Have family, have security. And with that, I am going to conclude this podcast. Cool You Have a Podcast is a podcast looking to make change. I'm looking to make change, and I can do that by engaging with people. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little podcast. I hope to bring some information and knowledge in the future. I hope to inspire. Actually, you know what? Cool You Have a Podcast for me is like, cool, you have a podcast. Cool, you do this. Cool, you think that. Okay, let's keep going. Let's do this thing. I'm going to focus on me. You focus on you. If you like this content or not, you're giving me views, so I appreciate it. If you like it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. If you're watching, if you're listening, still hit the subscribe button. Give us a 5-star review. And so the overlords at Google can see that we are rising up together. Anyways, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll come back at you next week with a guest, with some fun conversation, and I look forward to it. Thanks for watching. Cool, you have a podcast. Cool. You have a podcast.